The government has moved to extend its travel ban on Chinese visitors and students from entering Australia in a bid to reduce the coronavirus outbreak. Universities say the extension will hit their bottom line with almost 100,000 foreign students affected. Tourism destinations across the country are reeling from the effects of the coronavirus. From Cairns to Cradle Mountain, the Chinese market has taken a massive hit, and there's no better time for us as Australians at home to take a domestic trip and support our local regions and what they have to offer. Joining me now from our Brisbane studio is Mr Gschind, CEO of Queensland's Tourism Industry Council. Daniel, thanks for joining us. Now, you've just got off a flight from Cairns. What's it like on the ground up there at the moment?
Well, it's certainly tough. The weather is beautiful, everything is ready, the shops, the businesses, the hotels, they're ready for visitors, but it's a tough stretch for the operators there. They're really taking a hit from both the coronavirus at the moment, but also the bushfires. As unaffected as they were in a physical sense, it still affected their business because the publicity that was created through the bushfires really had an impact, and the coronavirus now on top is devastating.
Travel groups have stopped coming to places like Cairns and Port Douglas and Mission Beach. What do you say to the operators on the ground who are doing it tough, that things will turn?
Well, they will turn, but this is right up there in terms of hits we've taken, and it will take quite a while to recover, even when the travel ban is lifted, and obviously it will be in the next few weeks or months perhaps, but certainly it will tail off after that as well. We will have a long time to rebuild the relationships in the trade with the trade partners in China in particular, but also with other trade partners that are very important. It's not just the Chinese market that's suffering for us, it's Europe, it's all the other markets that have taken a hit as well. And the operators, their costs keep going on, their staff costs, their rents, their ongoing costs are there, but their revenue is not, and that is something that we need to address through the marketing, which you already alluded to, and focusing on domestic travellers, obviously, but also through measures that help them through the tough times financially now.
And Daniel, we've seen today the launch of a significant tourism campaign in North Queensland to try and help them get back on their feet. What does that actually entail? What sort of money and what will it be pumped into?
Well, there's $2 million that have been made available immediately by the state government, and Tourism and Events Queensland and Tourism Tropical North Queensland are well placed to activate campaigns that they're intending to pursue. It's not just for now. This is really a long strategy over the next 18 months or so in the domestic market. It's a first step. The state government has also announced relief of fees and charges, particularly in ports, and visitor passenger charges that apply to the reef trips, for instance. So that's a really welcome step. We've been urging them to do this, and we're urging them to do more for other operators, not just in North Queensland, but also elsewhere in the state, and terrestrial operators. They need a break. They really need a break to visit the businesses that are now suffering. So we welcome what the state government is doing and what they've done. We urge the federal government to come to the party as well. It is very important. I spoke to you last week, and we did write to the Prime Minister last week, as have many other organisations, suggesting that that package of bushfire relief should be doubled now to address this even bigger crisis that we're facing through the coronavirus.
Now, Scott Morrison is a former CEO of Tourism Australia, so he understands the industry probably better than anyone. Have you had any response from the Prime Minister to your letter?
We have not yet had a response. We've also written to the Tourism Minister. There's a meeting scheduled for Monday with Minister Birmingham. We hope there will be some movement by then, and we'll see some steps taken. At the end of the day, Peter, we're all in this together. State, federal governments, the industry, the community. Tourism is so intertwined with the community, and both levels, all three levels of government, they have to really be with us, stand with us, and really make an investment now, which will be cheaper than fixing the mess if it really turns into a mess.
Daniel, you've been around a long time. You're probably the most experienced tourism executive in the country. I mean, you mentioned that you've seen these sorts of things before, and particularly around SARS and, of course, the collapse of Ansett. But this is right up there.
This is right up there, and it is a double whammy from the bushfires, which was so severe for the southern states, but for the whole country in terms of the exposure overseas and the negative exposure that we got overseas. And now this on top is really, really serious. Peter, we did remind today the operators up there what they already know, that we are a resilient industry. We will come back, and global tourism will continue to grow at a faster rate than the rest of the economy eventually. We will get back there, but the path to that growth is a difficult at one. We need everybody's cooperation. We need everybody's buy-in, state, federal, and as you said before, also the consumers who should really go and help their own country now, their own regions, and travel.
I was going to say, what can viewers watching tonight do to really stimulate, and particularly, you know, the areas that are hit hardest? And we are talking about North Queensland, but I guess there's tourism places throughout the country that are now hurting badly as a result of this.
Absolutely.
So I mean, you know, what would you say to viewers?
I say save yourself the trouble of going overseas at the moment. And
I mean, the dollar in the US is terrible.
Exactly. So have a really great value for money holiday to the places you always wanted to see in your own country but never have. Yeah. Now is the time to go in the next few months. The weather in North Queensland is great. The weather in other places around Australia is great as well. Take advantage. Do what you always perhaps wanted to do. Show your kids, show your partner, show yourself what's on offer in Australia and in Queensland.
It's interesting. I was talking to senior university people early in the week, and they said this is a double-edged sword for them, and it's the same for tourism. Australia has been very good at attracting Chinese university students and very good at attracting Chinese tourists. And you and I have both seen the way in which the Chinese tourist numbers have, I think, well, probably more than quadrupled in the last sort of 15 to 20 years. But at the same time, it then means that you have a reliance factor on this particular route and this particular people. I guess in some ways, you know, we've been a victim of our own success with this one.
That is very true, and we have seen a similar thing 30 years ago with the Japanese
exactly.
market, where we suddenly found ourselves really too much dependent.
And that was because of the GFC. They had a big problem with their economy.
That's exactly right, and it took a long while for the Japanese market to revive, and it's possibly never hit quite the heights it had previously.
Yes.
So it did teach us a lesson. The balance is very important, and certainly we have learned a bit. But, you know, when the Chinese market is growing, it's very hard to turn them away. I mean, it's obviously something every business wants to take advantage of, and that's what happened. And we have to make sure that we don't neglect other markets and keep a balanced portfolio.
Now, the Prime Minister has extended the travel ban to next week.
Yes.
Have you got any insight into what they're thinking? And obviously health is, and the protection of our people is the most important thing, and we understand that. But have you got any insight at all into when the government might be looking at relaxing this travel ban?
No, I think, look, that's entirely in the hands of the medicos and the medical experts who deal with this, and we accept, I guess, their advice, and we have to roll with it. But what is important, Peter, beyond the medical situation, is that our relationships with China in particular, very sensitive. It's an issue that we need to address now at the diplomatic, at the business, at the trade, and at the personal level, at community level. We have to make sure that China, and most importantly Chinese travellers, understand they will and are welcome here. We want to engage with them. We don't want any kind of sense of racism coming.
It's a very good point, Daniel, because there has been suggestions that may be an issue going forward.
Look, I think every nation is sensitive to that. We would be exactly the same if we travelled to a country suddenly we felt in any way sort of targeted or ostracised. So we have to make sure, as an industry, as governments, as business professionals, we have to make sure we maintain, build and nurture those relationships, because business is always built on trust, particularly in a situation like with tourism in China. It's a trust question, and we have to maintain and build that trust.
And when you think about some of these areas that we're referring to, and obviously we're talking about North Queensland, but even the Whitsundays, I mean, they've gone through Cyclone Debbie, they've had a spate of shark attacks, now they've got this, you know, sort of coronavirus impact. I mean, we're talking, you know, this is serious stuff, and you know, I know Daniel's been around a long time, and he understands how the tourism industry works, but it very much is a confidence industry, isn't it?
It very much is a confidence industry, and we talking to the operators today in Cairns, and the same would happen on the Gold Coast and other places. You know, it is really quite heartening to see how tough these people are and how committed they are to doing the right thing. They're in it for business, of course, but they're really in it heart and soul and everything. And often it's family businesses, it's generations of businesses. Restaurants. Everybody's in it. And, you know, Peter, I think I might have mentioned before, you know, when the tourism dollar stops, everybody in the community realises they're in the tourism industry, even if they don't deal with visitors themselves. That tourism dollar circulates through the economy, through the communities, right across Queensland, right across Australia. And we have to work together, stand together and keep them alive.
Well, there's a very passionate Daniel Gschind, and the challenge, I think, for the Prime Minister and Simon Birmingham is to really listen to what the industry is saying right now, and that is they need help. This is hurt, and let's hope that at this meeting on Monday that we get some sort of amicable and good solution.
Exactly.
Daniel Gschind, thank you for joining us tonight on
Peter.
Sky News Across Australia.